So the T-Rex Labs channel and the T-Rex podcast have been around for a long time now, but it's finally time for me to ask some advice of a professional YouTuber. Welcome back to T-Rex Talk. I have a very special guest who we have a lot of friends in common. We do a lot of stuff in common. I've never seen you not wearing a balaclava before, so this is a great mystery to me. How do you want to introduce yourself these days that you're no longer incognito? Do you have some fun alternative alter ego identities?
Yeah, I am Aaron, the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. You may refer to me as the Lord Commander.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah. So, administrative results is probably what people are most familiar with. And you have been around GunTube for some time. GunTube is a weird place. It's even weirder than, well, no, it's not weirder than other parts of YouTube, but it's weirder than certain parts of YouTube. I recently talked on the podcast. I'll name drop a little bit. A friend of mine is a guy that I've talked to a few times. He's a reporter at the New York Times, and his new beat is gun culture. And he talks about what gun culture is up to at the New York Times. But it was actually kind of difficult for him to convince the editorial board that GunTube was a real place. Like, he had to show them Demolition Ranch and Grand Thumb and be like, yes, look at the view count. They were like, no, this isn't real. He was like, no, millions, 14 million subscribers. People do watch this stuff. Like, nah, nobody watches this stuff. Yeah. So, according to the New York Times, we don't exist, but you're one of the big gun tubers. So, what advice do you have for me? What's GunTube like? Like, what's it like being a gunfluencer?
It is. I hate the term gunfluencer.
I wanted to lead with it for that very reason.
I hate the term influencer. I hate the term. Sometimes I even hate the term GunTube.
Sure. Yeah.
But it is what it is. Dude, it's wild to hear you say, like, he's one of the big ones. Like, I never thought that was going to be a thing. So that really strokes the ego. I'll take it, dude. Right.
Yeah.
It is wild to hear that. It's interesting to hear a guy at the New York Times is like, hey, we have this potential angle of American subculture. And it's like, you would think they would be somewhat inclined, like, or tuned in of, like, there's a Second Amendment. Yeah. Clearly there's going to be an audience for that, but I guess not.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a fascinating thing. Like, the New York Times of old would have been read in on stuff like this, but I feel like the new New York Times lives on the internet, and the algorithms are strong. The algorithms keep the bubbles in their separate spots. I feel like that's probably what happens.
I can see that. I can absolutely see that.
So yeah, so you're inside a bubble, the GunTube bubble, and what have the lessons been? Because I know that you had a job, like a real actual type jobs, and YouTube was an opportunity for you to do some new stuff.
Yeah, I was prior law enforcement, and that was probably my most grown up adult job. Right, did a few other jobs before that. I was like a trim carpenter, old tack rat going around nailing in baseboards in houses. And I got the PD job. And then I always had an interest in YouTube. Like, to me, YouTube made sense, where it was a place where you could express your ideas and essentially get what's outside of your head into a visual medium that people could understand. Like, and then, of course, getting to that point where it's actually good and watchable and people want to, like, actually spend time watching that, I think is really hard. And that's something that we're always working on. And, like, if there's any advice, I think about this a lot. If there's any advice, you're going to have to learn how to become cringe for a little bit. Like, chances are you'll look back at your own work and be like, that was really bad, before it could even approach being cool. Because people are going to be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And then, well, it's just what I want to do. Then it has a chance to pay off eventually, But
which is interestingly what YouTube was like back in the day. Like, I remember YouTube before there was a chance to make money. So everybody that was doing something on YouTube was doing it because it was what they wanted to do. And now it's, it's a career path, it's an industry.
Yeah.
So people who are willing to just make the stuff that they want to make, like Smarter Every Day is still like an old school YouTuber where he's like not chasing the algorithm. He's doing his own thing. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the secret. Everyone always says authenticity is the secret, but they never mean authenticity. They mean a carefully crafted facade of naturalness, but it's usually not real authenticity.
No, it's crazy to hear that like YouTube wants to be a path or a career. Cause like to me, like you hear about the stories of like kids where they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be an influencer. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, you're supposed to say like astronaut, doctor,
Yeah.
physicist. And then,
Katy Perry ruined astronaut. No one's going to want to be an astronaut ever again. Yeah.
hey man, I'm proud of Katy Perry. She's breaking the glass ceiling for women all across the world. She's crushing it. What was that? Yeah, like to me, YouTube was supposed to be like you accomplish something else or you do something else hard in life, and then you take that grueling life experience, the soul crushing aspect of the real world, and bring it into like the made up world of YouTube. You know, like that's what always kind of like YouTube was for me, like as a dude.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, women have a whole different existence of living where it's like they like the women, the female frequency is like in a whole, like when dudes get mad at women, they're like, why do women think like this? It's because their whole existence is pleasant in general. It's like the existence of being a dude is like no one has pity for you. It's like, oh, she's a girl. She'll figure it out. But anyway, it's like that whole process. So I'm speaking from the male perspective.
Yeah. It's such a fascinating thing because I'm a bit older than you, a little bit older than you, and I remember uh, there being a completely different way of doing celebrity before the internet. There was a much smaller pool of people who could become celebrities. It was much harder. In some ways, the path was a little bit more defined, maybe. But yeah, you had to do something cool to be famous. You wouldn't become famous, then go do something cool. But I see people doing this now where it's like, I'd like to be an author. What should I do? It's like, well, first become a YouTube personality, build up a huge online brand, and then write your book and try to sell it to your pre-existing fans that you have cultivated that want to hear from you, which is, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. I'm not sure that I like that, but that's the way that people are thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
the publishing companies will not help you. You have to help yourself. You have to self-publish and you have to build a fan base ahead of time. Marketing first, book later.
Yeah. It is crazy. It is crazy. You're doing no footwork as a creative before, I guess. I think in some ways YouTube's really cool because it's like our parents' generation never had anything like this. For a chance where it's like, in theory, the level of success I've had, and it's like I'm driving an Aston Martin, but like the level of success I had versus my education level versus my potential, like, business level, in the business world, it pales in comparison to how well I'm actually doing. You know what I mean? Like I shouldn't be doing as good as I am in theory, like on paper. But it's like with this whole different platform, you can sidestep all of those standard check marks of what society used to.
Yeah.
And you can succeed in a whole different place. Like that to me is a beautiful thing about social media, where it's like dummies can now become hyper successful if if they figure it out.
Yeah, well, and I think part of it is other parts of the system are kind of broken. Like the people who do the proper path, they go to the right schools, they get indoctrinated into a new kind of pretty impractical way of thinking, and then they come out hoping the jobs exist from the other end. Like that just doesn't work the way that it used to. So it's I can't remember exactly what technically I am. I'm technically a high school dropout, but I did actually get into college briefly, kind of, sort of in another country for a moment. So I might also be a college dropout. Like the New Zealand government never fully decided whether or not my tuition went through. So I'm Schrodinger's college dropout. I'm not sure.
Okay, so am I. I was a college dropout as well.
So, yeah. Well, but there's a little bit more to the puzzle here because I have a feeling. Well, actually, I want to tell you I'm a huge fan of your non-gun channel where you talk about movies and cultural stuff. But if your goal was just pure monetary success on YouTube, I have a feeling that maybe you would do other stuff to appease the algorithm. You have more of a cause, more of a mission than that, right? It seems to come across through some of your materials.
I think if you're chasing pure money on YouTube, there are subjects that you could do or video ideas that you could do that would be much more appealing to a very wide audience. Just certain concepts in general. Granted, it's not necessarily something I want to go. Like, I'm not trying to become like the biggest YouTuber ever. One thing that I think is more fascinating is a career on YouTube, like where it's a steady, stable career. And it may not be as sexy as getting as many views as you want, but it's still enough to sustain a certain lifestyle on those number of views, like just working class lifestyle, but your working class just so happens to be YouTube. Like that's where I tend to think I want to focus on more, because to me, it could be more longevity based, right? Like sometimes you have creators, they come in super white hot, get a massive audience, and then a year or two later, it's like it dies off and they were just like a flash in the pan. You know, they had their moment in fame, whatever happened. It's like the Talk to a girl, right? 15 seconds of fame, Hawk Tua, and it's like podcast, but it's like, is that going to last forever? Chances are probably not. You know,
you can get a lot of potential. You can cash out.
Sure,
using a novelty crypto coin, like that's a perfect way. Yeah.
So I mean, that's a great way to end up in federal prison, probably, I'd guess. But I would advise against that. Don't try and do that to your audience. It's messed up. Yeah. I mean,
well, you bring something to the table, which is more than just viral 15 seconds of fame, which is. Yeah, 15 minutes of fame is crazy. Nobody gets that anymore. 15-second viral clips are what get you your 15 seconds of fame. What are you wanting to accomplish? Because you will have a slower, steadier approach with an audience who appreciates you because of what you provide. Like, what is your message? What is the main thing that you want to get across? Because obviously you're normalizing gun stuff within GunTube, but you also have this cultural channel. What is it that you're wanting to give to people? What's your mission?
I think in broader terms, I think ideally, like if there's a cultural aspect, it's pushing back against the craziness of lying to people about the state of the world, like with, when things just don't make sense. Where, for example, in the Last of Us show, the season 2, first episode, the main protagonist girl, she's like 5'1", probably 110 pounds. She ends up submitting a dude that's like 6'1", 250 pounds. I wouldn't want to fight this dude in hand-to-hand combat. And it's
he's
like
a very accommodating stuntman, though. Like he's working hard.
It's kind of like that, where it's like, listen, I don't mind like when girls can kill men using guns. Like that's exactly what guns are intended for. But when it's like hand-to-hand combat, and I have to suspend my disbelief about reality. That's when the stuff I don't like. It's like if you could encapsulate that and apply it to reality, where it's like breaking the facade of all the lies that kind of get pushed towards, young men in general, and encourage them, like, hey, you don't have to listen to this garbage. And I think that's kind of like the cultural kind of sense. And with firearms, the whole goal back in the day, and even now still, it's like, was normalizing them even more so than what they used to be. Because like I remember growing up, and it's like, oh, he's a gun guy. He's kind of weird. There was like a stigma around it. There was a stigma around, there's a stigma around owning guns and getting after it. And I think, thankfully, over the years, with all the stuff that like people within the firearms media space have put out, and then of course the global pandemic where everyone was trying to get toilet paper, I think that kind of opened people's eyes to be like, oh, when it gets bad, I need to protect myself. I think we kind of won in that aspect,
Oh yeah, well I can tell you from the T-Rex perspective, Body armor is one of my favorite litmus tests. Like we were carrying body armor for, I forget exactly when we brought it on, but a long time before 2020. And it just was not moving. We were talking about it. Lucas was wearing it in basically every video. We were, trying to educate people about it. And 2020 rolled around and people were staying home and they had a bunch of free money being mailed to them all the time. So like sales of everything except body armor were going up. People were buying more holsters and, war belts to go out and do training on the range. But then once the summer of peace and love kicked off and the mostly peaceful fiery riots kicked off, suddenly people understood body armor, and body armor was a very strong seller for a good chunk of time. So there's a bunch of stuff where, the debate is over. People already picked a side. Like the education has been done, the bell has been rung, and this has been completely normalized.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to agree. We did it. We won. We won gun. We did it.
Well, the crazy thing is, like when you look at gun sales, gun ownership, when you look at permitless carry passing in so many different states, when you look at how easy 3D printing is and how much more knowledgeable people are about certain basic things, gun control is over. All you can do is, pick off the prominent gun tubers, maybe potentially, pick off some random people who have purchased things that the ATF is going to take to a DOJ attorney. There really is there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Guns are obviously a 400 to 500 year old core human technology. People are just getting more educated about them, more interested in them. They're just getting easier to make. Yeah, mission accomplished. Except that there's a little bit more to it than just knowing about guns.
Sure.
So
there is a bit more to it. Yeah, absolutely correct. Just having a gun isn't necessarily enough, right? It's like there's the training, the employment of the firearm, the legal ramifications of said things, the time and place of said things. Yeah, it all comes down to. There's definitely a lot more. There's never ending cycle, I should say.
Yeah. What are some of your particular interests, or maybe there's anything from law enforcement that is like a particular issue or something that's unique to you? Because a lot of gun tubers do not have law enforcement experience. Some of them have military experience. Some of them are just dudes like me. But what did you pick up from the beat that is a particularly interesting thing?
I think sometimes within the firearm space, people get very worried about law enforcement overreach and tyranny on that front. And I think there should be a very healthy fear of that, because if you look at Waco, where you have the federal government coming in and burning down a compound full of women and children, that should absolutely be a thing. But I think sometimes that fear is overestimated when it comes to worrying about them too much. Like the standard patrol cop. Sure, they can do stuff, and it'd be like they can confiscate your guns under certain circumstances, right? Where if you're like making threats that you're going to kill yourself or something like that, they probably could pull some strings with the judge to confiscate your guns for a bit. Do I agree with that? Can't say that I necessarily do. It's like shall not be infringed. Like I'm pretty much a very 2A heavy guy. But there is rules to the game that have to be played. And I'm not a lawyer, right? I'm not trying to get too crazy on here. But when people overestimate the power that, say, like a small police department could have, or it's like, if you look around, citizen, there's more of you guys than them. Like, I'm not worried about the police. Like, if they're like, people worry about the police going door to door and taking guns. That's not a thing to worry about in my mind, unless there's a massive, massive army that can pull that off, right? Like even those guys would be like, no, I'm not doing that. That's a fast way to get into a coffin. Like if I was a cop and they're like, hey, you're gonna go door to door and confiscate a gun, it's like, no, I'm gonna die. Like that's first off, that's unconstitutional. No, I'm gonna die. That's a really bad idea.
Like, I'm more concerned about the prominent YouTubers who are complaining about this issue or reminding people about Waco a little bit too often, that kind of thing. That's an area where I'm a little bit more concerned. Just, I mean, you've been doxxed. Have you been swatted yet? Because this is a thing that seems to be on the rise.
No. Knock on wood, right? I haven't been swatted. I actually contacted my local police department and I was like, hey, this is the situation. Like, if you ever get a SWAT call about me at my house, just you may want to give me a call first before you roll the SWAT boys.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and ideally, I mean, this is a crazy thing because in one sense, that can't be the solution for everybody. Not everybody in town can call the chief of police and be like, FYI, I'm a swatting risk because I voted for Donald Trump. So just FYI, hit me up ahead of time. However, that is how things used to be back in the day. In small towns, like everybody knew the sheriff. Everybody knew the chief of police. Everybody had some way of connecting. Like the chief of police heard something was going on at this house. Maybe he wouldn't call them directly, but he'd call their cousin or uncle who lives, around the corner and be like, hey, have you heard anything about this? Like there used to be a much more relational kind of setup to our communities. And so the fact that you can call your sheriff or your chief of police and be like, hey, FYI, this may happen, and here's how you'd reach out to me. Do it anytime.
Well, they do it.
Is a little bit old-fashioned.
I didn't get a hold of the chief, but I contacted someone that I knew. Like, hey, give me a heads. Because it's like, I see where you're coming from. When you live in bigger cities, it's going to be much harder.
It's rough when it's big, yeah.
Because it's so bureaucratic and it's like so many layers. It's like it's not the same as probably living in a small town where you have a much more interpersonal relationship with everyone.
Yeah, and that's something that we're working on in our small town is better relationships with folks. How big is your area there?
It's pretty big. I live in the Phoenix Valley, so there's definitely a lot of people, and there's a lot of different cities with their own police departments. So I want to say like
gotcha,
millions, right? Then all the surrounding suburbs. So it's a very, very populated valley, which is crazy because it gets so hot here. It's a testament to man's ignorance to live here. So,
yeah. Well, it's also impressive to shoot YouTube videos out in the desert year round. That's something too.
I like to think it's my desert, my Arrakis, my dune.
Nicely done. Yes.
Thanks.
On that note, you have a gun channel, and then you have your bureau files talking about science fiction. You talk about other stuff too, but it's a very science fiction flavored channel. What's the reason for that? What's the reason for multiple channels? I say this slightly leading the witness because T-Rex Arms has like 8 or 9 YouTube channels. It feels like there's a new one every week. But yeah, why extra channels? What do you want to do with bureau files?
With bureau files, it was kind of just like this itch I had because I love movies. I'll try and watch when I have the time, like a movie a day. And so the goal was like, man, I kind of want to talk about this stuff because there's certain angles, and there's plenty of movie YouTubers, right? But there's certain angles I wanted to take where I wanted to try and approach it from a whole new aspect and kind of go over the lore, go over the fighting, the backstory of certain things, like the history of where this was similar to something else in human history. Like to me, that's really interesting. Like for me, that channel, like for me, when I watch, like if I'm like, not in a social setting, right? If I sit down to eat some food, I just pull up YouTube and I try and find a video while I eat because that's what I enjoy. I like to do that. So to me, it was kind of like that was the goal for like a channel like that where there's no stakes. There's no like, we're trying to change the culture. It's just pure binge watching entertainment. You can browse your phone while you watch it, play some video games while you watch it, eat food while you watch it. There's no like, we're trying to change this thing. It's just, I'm enjoying myself talking about this topic, right? The stakes are pretty low. I'm not going to get nuked off YouTube for anything I do on there. I'm not going to get retroactively punished thanks to YouTube, changing rules down the road. Like it's just a safe channel where I wanted to make these videos that I thought were interesting. Because at the end of the day, like I love making videos. It's one of my favorite things to do because to me, it's like I think I'm a creative person, and
it's very creative, yeah.
Favorite ways to exercise that is by making videos. Like I can't paint, I can't draw. Like putting together a video is how I exercise that muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is fun. Now, I will say that I've had a little bit less fun making videos over the last year because it's been one a week for a while. So it started off, all the ideas that I hadn't had time to do, had a lot of fun punching those out. And then there's a lot of like, oh, well, what's next Friday's going to be? But on the Labs channel, we've talked about movies a bit. And interestingly, those have been some of our worst performing videos ever on the channel. Up until this past Friday, we did an extremely boring old 1980s BBC political television show called Yes Minister, and that is our best performing video so far. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't understand how any of this stuff works.
I don't get
we did
it. Yeah.
Top Gun versus Ghostbusters, and nobody watched it.
I don't get it. Why won't you guys click? They are a fickle crowd, my liege.
Yeah. So yeah, well, what are some of the things, like obviously in the Bureau files, sci-fi particularly? What is interesting with sci-fi in particular? Stuff like Judge Dredd, obviously that would make sense. You brought a personal understanding of some of the issues in the movie to bear. What are some of the other interests?
I think Elysium was an interesting one. I think that was one of my personal favorites to talk about Agent Kruger, right? And something I never thought about when I was doing the movie is like the dude's technically like 140 years old.
That was a fun take. Just be like, how if you had this much training, this much experience, this much just water under the bridge. Yeah.
Right. Like in high stress situations, you have stress inoculation over time, right? Like I remember, like even as a police officer, I remember my first high stress call, and it was like the tunnel vision closed in, and I was like, "Oh, what's going on?" I'm really focused on one thing and missing everything else. And the guys were like, "Hey, this is where you messed up." And then by the end of it, it was like you're responding to a call that's high stress, and it's like, okay, you're pretty much just on autopilot, right? You're still staying vigilant, but it's like you're not stressed out whatsoever because you've done this scenario so many times. So it was like, imagine that over 100+ years of extreme high stress situations, not just a beat cop called military conflicts, and how like you probably develop such an intuition of how a violent situation would play out, like an interpersonal gunfight or a gunfight with multiple troops going into it. And it's like you'd get so good and or so desensitized. And then even playing with the morality of how like Kruger's character, like we don't know how he started out, right? We don't know his background in military service. He could have been a really guy.
I think that he turned into a cockroach briefly, and then they changed him back, and he was annoyed, and that was how he became a mercenary. I'm pretty sure that's the lore. Yeah,
he got sprayed by some alien goo, and then he.
I gotta say, man, I appreciate that actor tremendously because that is some top-notch work of wildly different characters. Interestingly, he's kind of like us. In South Africa, he was originally working as like a video editor in some of these little tiny local television stations. So he was a little one-man production team like us. That's how he got to know Neil, and Neil was like, "Hey, I want you to act in this because you'd be perfect for it." So, he's a little video production nerd like we are, kind of. It's kind of cool.
I can't take credit for just one man band. I got my camera guy Colton off camera right now, who he's a star. He's a star player.
Well, didn't you start off as a one man guy at the beginning when you were early days?
I had camera guys.
Okay, great.
Typically, the job is very demanding for being a camera guy, so it's like a full time thing.
Yes, for sure.
I always like edit my own videos, but eventually I was like, bring someone on, and that was Colton eventually, who can kind of capture what's in my head, and we still always review stuff and tweak stuff, but like how it turns into a business, where it's like if you want to keep this going, if you don't want to have to do an outside job to support this, you kind of need to do some business maneuvers to make it more viable for the longevity. So that was kind of like why I outsourced things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you completely. So there's a bunch of videos on the main T-Rex channel that I made by myself, or a handful. But yeah, T-Rex has pretty good sized team, I would say. And then T-Rex Labs, Ryan does basically all the shooting and editing because, yeah, you can technically do all the jobs, but if you want to turn it into a business, you can't really wear all the hats, in my opinion. There are so many different jobs. Switching gears between them all, you lose a lot of efficiency and you lose, I think, some creativity.
Yeah, I think sometimes you got to recognize when you're outplayed. Like there's always someone that could do certain things better. Like I've seen Colton edit, and like when he's doing the hotkeys in Adobe, like there's a whiteboard because we're in his office right now. There's a whiteboard with the hotkeys that he's like memorized pretty much, so he can edit even faster. It's like I never knew any of that stuff. So he's outplaying me.
Those hotkeys are great. I use N all the time. Almost nobody knows that N does anything inside of Premiere, but I use it occasionally. It gives you like a weird sliding tool that lets you adjust between different clips. The rolling edit. It's rolling edit. Yeah.
You got it.
Almost nobody knows that one, but well done, Colton. Yeah.
Oh, it's funny.
That's one of my top secret ones. I've had a lot of people like do a little double take when I pull out the rolling edit tool. So yeah.
Oh my God. You guys are what? Squared away.
There's only 3 people on the face of the earth that know this. It's me, it's Colton, and ironically enough, Charlton Colty, or whatever his name is.
I know it now too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then there's just the teamwork aspect, being able to, 2 heads being better than one, and having multiple sets of eyes on things is huge. So yeah. So what does your production schedule look like? Like, are you just constantly churning stuff out, or are you a slave to the algorithm, or do you wait for inspiration?
It's not. In theory, I could probably post a bunch of videos if I wanted to. Typically, the bottleneck is the edit. Like with Colton and I, we go film a bunch of stuff, and it could vary in tediousness depending on how like many shooting locations and or skits and or information that I'm trying to get across. If it's a simple video, I can knock it out in a day, like no problem.
Yeah.
In a few hours in theory. And if it's a simple edit, it could be up in the same day, most likely. The problem is it's like typically what we'll do is stack footage. So we'll go out, we'll film maybe a few different things and relative to the subject. Maybe bring if it's a gun video, right? We'll bring a few different guns. We'll get some shooting. We'll get some like just out in general shooting the gun, doing like a little training, maybe something like that. So it stacks on. I've filmed like videos over months of doing that, where it's like we're filming other stuff, but we're always bringing, say, that gun out and shooting with it and getting footage with it. And then when it comes time to edit, there's a bunch of experience with the thing. So
nice.
It's very all over the place is what I'm trying to say. Like it can be either super fast, or it could take months, or it could take a year if I was filming over an entire year. Like there's no general answer.
Gotcha.
With the algorithm, like I do have sponsors which help support the channel, right? I've been accused paid for gun reviews. I have not been paid for a gun review. I will happily say that. There's a big misconception. I wish I was getting paid. I would be driving a much better car.
You haven't gotten that SIG money yet?
I haven't gotten the SIG money yet. No. So the sponsors do help with keeping the lights on. So I do try and keep to a schedule for that. But with how I have the finances set up, it's like I've stored away the funds in case we need to take more time to do anything, really.
Right. Yeah.
Not worried about it in the sense of like, oh, if I miss this week, it's going to break the channel. It's like, no, I in the hard times or in the good times, I bank that so we can keep filming and it's covered. Right. So I'm not trying to worry about that. And the goal is to make as entertaining of a video as possible while getting what I want to say across. So
yeah,
that was a big long-winded answer to say that it varies a lot.
At this point, I don't know who's watching this podcast episode because it's just 2 people talking about their favorite edit tools and their workflow. So I'm hoping that people are enough of a fan that they want to hear about your the minutia of your workflow. Speaking of which, in the Bureau Files videos, how much writing do you do ahead of time, and how much just off the cuff is it? Because you have a ton of ad libs that are so perfect that they sound heavily pre-scripted.
They're funny enough. There's actually a lot of writing that goes into that channel. That's one thing that I've really tried to work on recently. Because back in the day, even going back to when I was growing up in school, one of my greatest talents was being, and pardon my French, a fantastic bullshitter, and just being able to improv stuff off the fly. And I kind of took that and was like, okay, if it's in my head, what am I going to talk about? How am I going to structure this? And kind of just start talking. Well, as time goes on, I decided that I want to start scripting stuff more, so it's much easier and engaging, and it flows a lot better. Mm-hmm. So I've done that for both channels, essentially, where it's like I'll sit down, I'll write out a script, and I write it out in my head word for word, and then I'll tweak it, and then I have ChatGPT help out with making sure things are structured where the AI comes in useful, you know. So I'll do that a lot, and I'll even run it by some of my family or friends and be like, hey, is this script entertaining? What should I tweak here and there? So there's a lot more intentional process there. And of course, when it comes time to film, if Colton's like, hey, this could be funny, or if I think of something funny, we'll throw it in there, of course. But there's a lot more scripting that we do nowadays. Like that's probably where a lot of my behind the scenes goes. It's like business stuff and scripting videos. So I can keep my personal touch on, because I don't want to get too like, I thought about hiring like a writer even. I think what I may do is even hire like a researcher that could look at all this stuff, because sometimes I don't trust ChatGPT because I've like seen it give me certain info and I'm like, that's wrong. So I wouldn't mind having a
actually trust Grok a little further. I did a video on 5.7 recently, and I did a bunch of research myself. And then I was just out of curiosity, I gave Grok a deep research project, and I was like, I don't know if I trust this. So I gave it basically the same queries, the stuff that I'd researched for 5.7, and it came back surprisingly, their conclusions, Grok's conclusions were surprisingly similar to mine. And it lets you see the reasoning. Like you can open the little window and kind of look under the hood. And there were some bits where it was not only were the conclusions the same, like it was kind of my thought process where I was like, but wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And there was actually a really clever bit where it was like, I'm comparing 9mm and 5.7. These 5.7 ballistic tables are from a carbine, but 9mm is generally fired from a handgun. The questioner probably wants the handgun ballistic tables. Like a good assumption. So, just saying, Grok surprised me with the deep research tool. So, but I still don't trust AI. You need a human to go in and confirm that this stuff is accurate.
Yeah, I think the time of collecting a bunch of information makes that AI worth it, because it's like having to go do that manually is pretty brutal. So at least it can collect all the sources and be like, all right, go through and check it. So I like that.
Yeah. Especially since search engines are basically useless now.
Like if you Google stuff, like their AI is terrible. Yeah. Like the summary up top, Google's got so much stuff. That's a we talked about that before too, where it was just like not doing its job.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. Now here's a more personal question. I also write scripts in my head and I'm thinking about business stuff. The problem is it's really easy to do that at home. It's really easy to do that constantly. It's really easy to do that when you are spending time with your family. Like it's really easy for that part of the creative process to sneak in and steal time away from me. So is that something that you've also noticed?
Yeah, I would say when I first started really leaning into it, like it wasn't just a side thing. Even in some of the side things, like I would come home from my shift at the PD, work on YouTube, and it took up like 2 days of my time off. And then there's like a free day. But my wife and I, we were both like young, freshly married. She was working. So to me, I was kind of leaning into it. It eventually would become more of a problem. Like there would be constant conversations of like, hey, I think you're working too much. I think you're focusing on this too much. And when I talk to other guys about that too, like it's not just me, like there's other guys where like your girl's like, hey, they're doing this too much. And the friction is like in my head, I'm trying to work really hard so I don't have to work hard later.
Yeah.
And it's like trying to get that point across. Eventually, I don't hear about it anymore. Like I think I've balanced things out really well. Like there are times I'll be walking around my house, like talking about a script, like out loud and like workshopping it. But generally, like once I'm good for the day or I check out, like I'm pretty good about being present, I would say. But I think that is a constant thing that you're going to have to deal with if you pursue something to the extreme. Like if people in your life, like your loved one or your spouse or your girlfriend or whatever is going to like, if it's your spouse, so ideally it'd be your spouse because she's like legally committed, but she can always leave you, I guess, and take half your stuff. But like you kind of got to communicate that to them because, you know, they maybe were signing up for a normality that they were expecting. They weren't expecting you to maybe shift gears and pursue something extremely, voraciously. Like they weren't expecting that. They're expecting you to be like the 9 to 5 clock out, come home. Now you're home, and this is the life you. But once they kind of get on that page, I think they can be extremely supportive. I think you just have to communicate that and like really sell it to them. Because like, listen, do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do you want to like enjoy your time with the baby? Then I have to kill myself working like that. That's kind of like the idea. And typically, I think women will get on board with it if you convince them, but maybe not.
I just see it as kind of a like I'm imagining the conversation that you're having where you're like, look, I know you didn't think anything was worse than a husband who's a cop, never knowing if they're going to come home, working the midnight shift, fighting tweakers all day, getting shot at. But I'll tell you, there is something worse, and we're going into that full time.
Being a YouTube idiot. Congrats, sweetheart. More than 1-3. Yeah. It was definitely an interesting career shift. Like I remember when I told one of my family members, this was time like still had a balaclava on. So you're doing gun stuff on the internet with the balaclava, so you look like a stereotypical criminal, bad guy from a movie. But I was telling like one of my older uncles on my dad's side, I was like, hey, I got this cool thing. I got a YouTube channel that could potentially work out. It's got a lot of potential, right? Like I'm at a point where it can take off. Like I was really like, I believe in myself. Yay. And he just looked at me, got quiet, and he's like, it's okay, buddy. You'll figure it out. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I promise it's going to work. But
yeah, just like you're trying to sell it to me too hard. You must be still in the convincing yourself phase. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no, trust me, it's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned, I can relate to a lot of this stuff. Now, so for me, the YouTube has always been in service of the company. Like T-Rex is the thing. T-Rex is the sponsor of the YouTube channel. The YouTube and video production always come after that. So it's a little bit different. But the other day I was driving somewhere and I had one of the kids in the back seat, and all of a sudden he's like, "Daddy, why do you talk to yourself all the time?" I'm like, "I'm working on a script." we're having dad-son time, and I find myself working on the intro to a video.
But Daddy's ideating right now. He's monologuing. I need this.
Yeah, this is. We need 6 more drafts of this. Let me know if you can punch this joke up for me. Yeah, you're 5. You're good at humor. Yeah.
You ask him like, "Hey, when did you check out when I was talking? When did you get bored?"
Yeah. Let me know when it sagged. When was the weak point? Yeah.
Well, Dad, there was no trains or planes involved, so I actually never cared. So.
Yeah. I had a hilarious moment the other night. I showed my kids a Homestar Runner for the first time, and each one of the kids had a totally different reaction to the video. But the oldest one was the only one that got the jokes. And then second oldest, she had the exact same look on her face that her mother does. It was like, "Why do you guys think this is funny?" And then next down was like, "Oh, I thought the part where this guy, the slapstick was funny." And then down at the bottom, the little kids are like, "Yeah, we're watching something and that's fun. And I just enjoy that we're doing it together." Like everybody had a completely different take on what we were trying to do.
Yeah. You found at least one of your target demographic, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So I need to figure out the work-life balance thing. But you mentioned like you're working hard now so that you can work a little bit less hard later, so that you can build up some momentum. And I think that that's really good. The problem that I'm having is just that my kids are old enough now that now should be the time that I have more time for them. But I do feel like there's this window. I don't know that YouTube is going to be gun friendly forever. I don't really know, all the things that are going to happen in the future. We have this great unique time in history where Donald Trump is in office, and that means whatever that means. And gun sales are going to be doing this, and gun rights are going to be doing this, and opportunities to talk about stuff are at a particular point. So I definitely feel like the need to let's strike while the iron is hot. Seems like the iron is hot right now. Is that a sense that you have as well?
I think in some ways I maybe disagree. I think during the offices where there are people that are like Democrats, for example, where they're opposed to gun ownership, I think it creates the counterculture more fiercely than it does when, say, the Republicans are in office, because for obvious reasons, right? You have these people that are nonstop talking about taking away your constitutional right to bear arms. So then people be like, no, and then they subconsciously maybe go watch more gun-orientated content. I think it's like when you enter the time of peace and prosperity, everyone's not worried about it as much now. So it's like, well, got that covered, we're good. That's maybe how I see it. I think I do agree in the sense that the window may be closing. And, it could just be a gut feeling. Maybe there's whispers behind closed doors. I watched someone's YouTube video. I think it was US Airsoft, and he was talking about the manual reviewers at YouTube and how it works. One egregious example of it is that these guys that were, these folks, I should say, they only have like 5 minutes to actually review your video, and then they have to move on to the next video.
Interesting.
So it's like, I've gotten videos back that are like, they don't clear, and then the reason why is like some part in the video that doesn't have to do with anything of what the description of why it didn't clear was. So they're just like manually just punching through all this content as fast as possible. And then there's like just reasons they can deny your video with no explanation, right? It's like, it's just not appropriate. Yeah. And then through that bureaucratic, method, you're just canned in that sense. In that video, I saw both bureau files and administrative results in that video. Like, it was blacked out what it was, but I saw the YouTube name and I was like, wait a second. I was never told about this, but I just saw it and it was like a jump scare. So it's like,
interesting.
You are on these people's radar, right? Yeah. So that's the alarming part, where it's like you're making this content. There are obviously people out there that don't like, maybe the certain style of what you are, right? Your political oriented.
Yeah.
Like that. It just doesn't jive. So maybe it gets mass reported and then it gets on their radar. So then they're tracking you. I think with the retroactive punishment, I think that will probably eventually be like GunTube's downfall. Like, they're eventually just, because it's their platform, they can do whatever they want, and it sucks.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to eventually roll out rules where it's like, and here's your strikes, you're done, and then you're gone, and that's pretty much it. Like, that's my guess, because a lot of stuff was going to go for a bit, and then it became that it wasn't, and then it became like, even videos that I had that weren't full auto were getting age restricted for no reason. And so it's just like a out of nowhere retroactive punishment after these videos were already monetized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm wondering if it is. So my gut feel is that it all depends on what X does, what Twitter does, because Elon Musk has made himself odious to folks on the left. But X is getting enough eyeballs that people have to, these other platforms have to react to X in some way. They have to either say like, oh, this is where the eyeballs are going, we need to do this. Or because it's Elon Musk, they're going to be like, we're going to go the opposite way. Like, we're going to restrict stuff even harder because X is just the Wild West. And so that's where I don't know which way it's going to go, but it feels like that's too much of a factor. Like before Musk bought Twitter, it seemed like everybody that had a platform got together in a room occasionally, wearing their giant black hoods, and they got around the table and put the blood on the pentagram, and that was how they were able to figure out stuff like we're all gonna ban Alex Jones the same day. Like we're gonna claim that it's a coincidence, but it's gonna be the same day. But now that there is this pretty unbridled place, like you can no longer deplatform everybody in a single day. So what happens is there's going to be a place where the Hunter Biden story is going to get out on Twitter. So do you want to be caught hiding it or not? I think that there's going to be platforms that go one way or the other. They're going to be like, no, we don't want to get caught hiding stuff. And everyone's like, no, we need to virtue signal that we hid this thing even harder than anybody else. So I don't know what YouTube's going to do. I'm super curious because YouTube is a big, complicated, expensive thing for Google to run, but it has all the eyeballs. Like it's the place. Patreon does not compete with it. Rumble doesn't actually compete with it. So, they're going to want to hang on to that level of influence and importance for sure.
Yeah, I do love YouTube, not the company itself, right? But I love the idea of YouTube, of broadcasting yourself. Like I enjoy so many YouTubers. So it does break my heart when it's like this specific genre and niche is getting in trouble for X, Y, and Z, like us in the gun space getting in trouble for this stuff. Like it does bum me out because this is where I want to be. I want to be on YouTube. Like I enjoy this. I think it's the best place to share.
Yeah.
I don't know if Elon Musk can actually afford YouTube or if they would ever let it go, which I highly doubt. And I wish Twitter was a good place to share videos, but for now it's not. Like it's not going to be unless they really overhaul it for that user base. But that was my dream is like Elon makes Twitter or X, I guess, much more viable for a video platform.
Yeah. It is a pain to put videos up on X. I mean, you can put a video up and it'll get eyeballs and it'll be great. But then after a few days, no one will ever see that video ever again. And even if you want to go back into your own archive and be like, how many people did watch this video? You'll never find your own videos back in your feed. So I feel like they're a ways away from competing with YouTube.
Yeah. And any platform coming out is going up against a absolute giant competition. It's just not happening. And then if they even come out with that, are they just going to lean into like short form reels? So that's a whole different can of worms. But
I've been trying to do the reels. It's my brain is not enjoying it particularly, but we'll see. You'd think that I would be better at this because. I am good at a snappy, sarcastic comment and then completely check out and move on to the next thing. So you'd think my attention span is too short, just the right for this. But
you would think, but I think getting a good reel requires so much work and there's so little payoff from it. Like in the sense, like monetarily and impactfulness, right? Like, did that resonate with the audience? Like, are they like still like, oh my gosh, like I don't really ever hear like, did you see this really insightful reel I watched the other day? Typically people retain certain things, or maybe if it's really funny, they'll be like, oh, I saw this really funny one, but it's not like, wow, this topic shared in this, clip was so crazy. It doesn't have gravity. I mean, sure, you can make it as entertaining or captivating as possible. I think the main benefit is getting as much information boiled down and to the point with no extra fluff whatsoever across hyper fast, right? Like if you want to learn how to like change a tire, a reel is actually not bad. It's like do this, and this, and it's like you're good. There's no like, hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're changing the tire on my 2009 Nissan. It's like there's none of that.
When I was a boy, blah blah blah. Yeah,
there's none of that. Like that's where the benefit I think is. But as far as like impactful, gravitating, like getting to know creators, like reels are very much like you have to find like a bit, it seems like, and stick with it for people to recognize. Like of all the most popular short form creators I've seen, they have like a very recognizable bit that they do. And what's crazy is like in theory, it's like those guys are very replaceable. It's like if they ever have like a controversy, they get nuked. it's like,
Yeah.
well, I guess he's gone, you know. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you see yourself doing long term? Like, let's say YouTube, keeps being or starts being cool. YouTube doesn't get worse than it is. How long do you want to keep doing this? How long do you see this being fun and interesting and worthwhile?
I mean, I think if YouTube didn't keep devolving into a hostile environment for gun content, I would go for probably a really decent amount of time. I definitely don't want to do gun YouTube forever. I think it's there would be shifts and pivots of what I do if I keep on administrative results, where it wouldn't be a focus about making a lot of videos, but a lot more short videos, like maybe even like short films I want to do. Mm-hmm. I've talked about that. And that would be down the road, because there are still plenty of ideas that I want to execute and get done. But like long term, I think eventually it would be like more meaningful short films, I think. And it kind of sounds pretentious, I think, but like I want it to resonate with like the human experience, and like people being like, oh wow, that actually captured this emotion that I've felt before very well. Like people are very emotional creatures, and I want to kind of tap into that a little bit, besides just going over like the latest and greatest, coolest gun from insert brand,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I resonate with that, because when I was younger, I desperately wanted to make movies, and I worked on movies, but Hollywood just, we talk about YouTube being kind of stifling. Hollywood is the worst. So I no longer do, really, this seems very sad, but I no longer really have a desire to make movies anymore. Like it is kind of sobering to even say that out loud, but I appreciate. I have a deep understanding of wanting to do that. I used to really want to do that, and I really appreciate the movies that I did work on. But Hollywood being weird and terrible, unions being difficult. Watching the New Zealand film industry kind of get strangled by unions was very kind of. It was a sad experience to watch that and just kind of see things change. And that's part of the reason that I love YouTube. I love that YouTube is the smaller scale, more creative way of doing things, the way that, guerrilla filmmaking used to be, the way that indie filmmaking used to be, or the way that film industries in small, out of the way parts of the world used to be. So I deeply appreciate that aspect of it. But I also just make videos usually because there's a message, and I don't really want to be the guy doing it. In fact, there's several times when I wished I had the brilliant idea of wearing a balaclava in videos, so that the video would stand or fall on its own merits, kind of thing, as opposed to having to build up a channel and so forth. I appreciate that about you. That's a motivation for making short films and connecting with people.
It's a bold. I'll take that. I think it's a bold endeavor, because there's the harsh reality to it of the financial side. Because if you're running like a business, chances are those short films aren't going to make a profit. Right now, there could be crowdfunding involved, but like the reality side of things, it's like it's a massive time sink. There's a lot of people that you'd have to bring on to get the job done. In relative terms to a YouTube production, it's not going to be like a Hollywood film. It's not going to be like a Tropic Thunder film, right? But it's still a much bigger beast and a much slower speed to crank those things out. I think, in some way, you kind of capture it where it's like decentralizing and making your own version of a mini Hollywood that guys could enjoy, where it captures certain elements of things that Hollywood just can never do.
Right.
I think that would kind of be like the goal, where it's like entertainment, like high quality entertainment that doesn't have any message that is over like ridiculous, So I think that would be like the dream, and it's just good storytelling as best that we could come up with as like dudes out in Arizona. Like we're not like high end writers, but bringing on people that know how to write a story and then executing that story, I think would be really fun.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think
Well,
probably focus on its own virtue signaling. So, and it ruins fantastic concepts.
yeah. In some ways, I feel like it is getting, there are several ways in which it's getting easier. Like the technology has made it easier. Like right now, we are shooting a podcast on cameras that look amazing. And 20 years ago, this would have been absurdly expensive to be able to shoot stuff on a full frame camera. And now it's just like, yeah, I'll just use that for a podcast. It'll be fine. And there's going to be some AI tools that are useful without putting, too much AI flavor on top of everything. But there's going to be things that make small teams more capable. And the big streaming platforms are going to get worse before they get better. So there's going to be, I think, a good opportunity to compete with them on some stuff. So I'm optimistic about it. But I still, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready to try again.
I've been hurt before.
I've been hurt before. No, and part of it is time. Those kinds of projects, there has to be a demand for them because there is so much work that goes into a 90-minute feature film. And there are guys on the internet who get 1 million eyeballs streaming 6 hours a day with zero prep time. Like it's kind of a fascinating thing. Like the quality of what they are creating, I would look down my nose at it. But the number of people that get enjoyment and entertainment out of it and want to sit and watch them for just huge amounts of time, like that's either a terrible like indictment of Hollywood, or it's just like, no, this is, people want this. I think part of it, and if anybody has watched the podcast at this point, they might agree with me. I think part of it is that we don't have deep, meaningful relationships with people as much now as we used to. And so if you don't have that, hanging out with a streamer for 6 hours in the background is preferable to a 90-minute Indiana Jones movie because you don't really have friends to talk to about the Indiana Jones movie that you just watched. It's actually better to hang out with some friends who are podcasting and chatting and having, a human connection.
Yeah, I can see the appeal. It's like this insert streamer. I like their personality. They're also experiencing life like I am. What's their take on it?
Yeah,
pretty straightforward to me. It is wild to think like the millions of views they can get for the very low production. But that to me is also the beauty of the internet.
Yeah,
like the rules get upside down.
It's kind of crazy. Like your videos are high quality, and the amount of content that you're putting out. The T-Rex Labs videos are much simpler. They're more straightforward. But, we're doing like a broadcast half hour every week. The last time I did that was a news show with a much larger team and worse gear. And in many ways, like I like what we're doing now better. Like things are faster, move quicker. So yeah, I don't want to make the argument that quality is inferior to quantity, but quantity has a quality all its own. Sometimes that's what people are actually looking for, which is why this podcast is, going to be an hour-long conversation. We just pumped out 60 minutes worth of high-quality content. It's high quality because the bokeh is excellent on these cameras.
Fantastic. I think they filmed The Creator, that sci-fi movie, off the camera that we're filming on my end right now. The Sony A7S3. No, the Sony FX3. My bad.
So I have the exact same sensor in my camera. Technically, it's the vlogger version of the camera. It's the ZV-E1, but it's the same sensor that Gareth Edward used to shoot The Creator. So yes, this is a cinematic podcast conversation that we're happening right here, and it deserves all the eyeballs that it's going to get. And we should maybe get a Netflix contract or something.
You should. You got to lock down.
So, yeah, well, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and it's been really fun to talk about. I don't want to take too much of your time since I already, for the listeners, got the time zones mixed up. So we're already off script. But it's been cool to see what's been happening over the years with the channel, and anything that we can do to help with various projects, please let us know. I'm super curious to see what happens over the next 4 years. But one of the really cool things about the GunTube community is that I do think we have a little bit more of an actual community behind it than some of the other different YouTube communities. And that doesn't mean that everybody's just the greatest person ever. You've been to SHOT Show. We were commiserating earlier just about how it's not time to want to go to SHOT Show again. There's more time needs to elapse before SHOT Show is ready to go back. But within the GunTube community, within gun culture 2.0 or 3.0, I do think there are, some really fantastic people and actual relationships and actual communities coming out of it. And some of that is, I think, just the fact that if you're going to go out and shoot guns with people, there has to be a certain level of trust. There has to be a certain level of going outside. There has to be a certain level of spending time together that other hobbies may not require. But also, I think there's a little bit more to it than that. It is already countercultural, and it's based on certain presuppositions about taking responsibility and taking care of other people that I think are really good for people. So overall, I'm encouraged. Sounds like I've been complaining a lot this episode, but overall, I'm really encouraged and happy by meeting people, talking to people who are involved in this thing, because it's been just really cool to see it grow.
It has been. It has been an interesting journey to watch and be a part of, for sure.
Yeah. And you had some interesting rocky experiences that probably other people didn't have. But I appreciate you. All the stuff that you're doing, I think, is really helpful. You had a good extra perspective and flavor to the whole thing. Do you have anything coming up that you want to tell people about or hint at or tease for the future?
Nothing crazy out of the usual. If you do go over to Bureau Files that we talked about and you don't like it, don't subscribe. I don't want you there.
Very good.
I only want you to stay if it resonates with you. That's all I want.
Yeah. Interesting thoughts. Are you going to get deeper into, because I've seen you talk about Sharp's Chosen Men a number of times, and I'm looking forward to an episode about that. I've seen you be doing stuff with longbows, so there's a few things that I know that you're working on that I'm eager to see what that leads to.
Well, you sound like you were closing out, but if you're bringing up sharps and longbows, my good sir.
All right, okay, I'm back in. All right,
I got nothing but time. So I first off, I love Bernard Cornwell's work. I listened to his Archer series, like the Longbow series. There's other names with it, where it covers the battles of like Crécy, Poitiers, Agincourt, and it typically follows like a fictional made-up archer. And sometimes, from what I was reading, or remembering, is like he would find names of like these archers that were on the roster and kind of use them for the story. It's kind of like side quests throughout the book to find like the Holy Grail, but they also happen to be an archer in King Henry V's army, so they're going to end up at Agincourt and fight, and there's all these different stories. So I've always loved his work. On the topic of war bows, I will say, for whatever reason, I've always been into archery. Like when I was a kid, I was always trying to make my own bows and arrows, and then it kind of hit me one day as a grown man. I was like, I've always wanted a war bow. I have the money to buy a war bow. And then so I got it and I was shooting it and I was like, I wonder if anyone else has interest in the war bow. So then made some videos with it. Some of them did good. Some of them didn't do so hot, but it was one of those like favorite subjects of mine because I think it's so interesting where it's like, you go back to like the 1400s when the war bow was probably peak in, in that European theater. And you have these dudes and they're smaller than us today. And, stature and or body weight. And yet they're allegedly pulling these extremely heavy bows.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's insane to think like the amount of strength they built up over the years. And it's kind of like
conditioning. Yeah.
Conditioning and how like these archaeologists are like, oh yeah, that guy was an archer. Look at his shoulder, how it's all messed up.
Yes.
And like the only evidence of bows we have, I think, came from, at least for this period, I think came from the Mary Rose, which sunk. It was under like the Tudor era.
Right. Yeah.
And they were recovering these war bows, and some of them were said to be like a draw length of, or draw poundage of 200 pounds. And even getting to that, there's like maybe they had this stave that was 200 pounds, but then if it went to a specific archer, they could carve it down a little and make it more tailored to them. A lot of debate there, but like if you're looking at modern guys, like there's a Joe Gibbs and my buddy Dash who can pull 160 pounds, even heavier. It's like, well, I maybe don't doubt that these guys that were doing it their whole life could do 200 pounds. How often could they do 200 pounds?
Right. Yeah.
No.
Three battles. Yeah.
Yeah. you got 3 pulls and you're done. Hopefully you hit your target. I've always loved that stuff. I think it's a really fascinating era because it was a break from the monotony of like hyper modern orientated combat, and it's fun to look back and think like dudes are just lobbing sticks at each other from across the battlefield until the infantry close the gap or they're working the flank. So it's really fun to think about in that sense. I played a lot of medieval 2 Total Warfare, and so like you have like your neat formations, but in reality it's like those formations probably get a little bit more messy when things start happening, and I just love that stuff. But
there's a bunch of it's really interesting to think about, and there's a fun aspect to it too from the British, which is you have your English yeoman. Like you have a civilian class that is dedicated to, sometimes required to do this military training for the defense of the nation. They're required to own weapons. They're required to train with them. Other feudal societies don't do that. They do the opposite. It's just professional soldiers. But this opportunity of the longbow and the warbow for your citizenry to be a formidable force on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Because otherwise it's just like, no, we have our nobility and they get this amazing unbeatable armor and they get on this gigantic, ridiculously expensive horse, and then they can just kill anything. So peasants are garbage. You don't use them for anything. Like just the attitudes that come out of the longbow, and democratization is the wrong word, but a decentralization of power gives a very different feudal style of government to England. So I'm working on some historical document research right now, and England just stands out as a place that preserves or at least recognizes the rights of individuals in a way that some of the other countries don't. Preserves is too strong a word. Sometimes preserves, but does recognize more than other countries around those 1200s, 300s, 400s. Like Magna Carta is an amazing document.
Yeah, I love that string of thought because it's kind of like one of the similar ones where you think like comparing it to us, right? I'm not going to be able to go out and buy an Abrams tank or fund a Predator drone for home defense, right? So best I got is a tricked out long arm. For those guys, those guys, they can't afford the plate armor. They can't afford, it's way too expensive. But with their years of shooting a warbow, they can drop that dude's horse, and that guy's out of his crazy expensive war horse. Now he has to go fight on foot while he's getting peppered by you and the boys with your warbow. Now he's hungover from drinking too much wine the night before. He's getting lit up.
Always happens.
Arrows, all these bodkin points, finding the weak points in his plate. It's a beautiful thing. I like that.
There's a recent Henry V movie that I haven't seen, but the Kenneth Branagh version is a favorite. So,
the recent one, are you talking about The King from 2019?
Yes, yeah. Haven't seen it.
Do you want me to ruin it a little bit for you?
Well, how good is it?
It's shot and filmed very well. I don't like Timothée Chalamet as King Henry V because Timothée Chalamet doesn't have the physicality presence as much as I would like to see. He's just still a little smaller stature. But, besides that personal preference, I think it was pretty decent of a movie. The problem is when it gets to Agincourt, is it falls apart. Like how the archers are used, the terrain, how it looks, nothing really matches up to how I visualized it based off of like Bernard Cornwell's reading or even playing Medieval 2 Total Warfare. It just, that one kind of bummed me out and it made me really sad.
Okay.
A lot of potential. Like for instance, the archers in that movie, they get off like 2 volleys and then they're like, all right, let's go join the melee. And it's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
There's no crossbowmen coming up and trying to shoot up the English, nothing like that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah, I was kind of avoiding. I thought Timothée Chalamet did a great job as Paul Muad'Dib.
Yeah.
I thought he was okay as the Lisan El Gaib, but I couldn't see him as Henry V. So I'm glad to know that I didn't miss out on an amazing battle scene because of it.
I mean, it's still, as far as, it's not amazing because it's like both knights on each side. They don't have like recognizable, distinguishable banners.
Right.
There's like the colors are kind of drab in certain parts, and so it's like making it more bleak than it needs to be. It's kind of like the Napoleon movie Ridley Scott did, where it's like the colors are kind of drab, but it's like, why you guys making this so like history is very colorful, just because they didn't have cameras doesn't mean they didn't get to see rich colors.
Right.
So,
yeah.
It's
one of the things I really like about the Kenneth Branagh version is the French knights are all clean, and the English are just exhausted and filthy and run ragged, and they pull themselves up for that last charge. So I thought that worked. The film worked surprisingly well for, I think it's Kenneth Branagh's first movie, and surprisingly cinematic for a stage guy's first movie.
That's pretty sick. I'll have to check that one out. I remember in Bernard Cornwell's book on Agincourt, of course it's fictional, but there was like a blurb where he was talking about they all had dysentery. So if they had to go relieve themselves, they would make them do it in front of the formation. So one, they don't run away, and two, they're leaving for the French as they roll up, So I thought that was an interesting little detail. It's like you're racked, you've been pissing out your butt, and now you have to pull a war bell. It's like, dude, that would be a tough day.
Yeah. And then, I mean, transitioning forwards to much more modern times, but the Napoleonic era is also pretty rough stuff. That's a fascinating time period. I being American, am more interested in the American War, but hearing about some of the other campaigns that were happening across Europe, some of the Indian campaigns that happened later, just is a fascinating time in history. And as much as I love technology, for me personally, reading about the fundamentals before we had the technology is fascinating stuff. And those fundamentals really don't change.
Yeah, with that Napoleonic era warfare, and first off, disclaimer, I'm neither an expert in, the medieval warbow stuff and or Napoleonic warfare. From what I've learned is that there are guys that spend years specializing in this stuff. I tried to approach it from like a gun guy who happens to enjoy this, right? So I'm a filthy casual. Yeah. But with the Napoleonic warfare, you have this conception, thanks to Mel Gibson, where it's like these dudes march forward, get like 20 paces away, arbitrary who shoots first. Americans, for whatever reason, are like, all right, let's go first. I get it. I'd want to shoot first. And then the British are like, all right, now it's our turn. And then they do a bayonet charge and the battle's over. It's like, from what I'm reading in the research, it's like they have like these rolling gunfights still in formation.
Oh,
but
it's amazing. Yeah.
Skirmishing.
And this is a science. Yeah. It's so I have a friend who is not a casual. He's a hardcore guy. He has spent a lot of time as a Civil War reenactor with an artillery company. So his experience is a little bit later, but he has a lot of study into this earlier time and a lot of time with the guys who were the really hardcore reenactors. And he is incredibly bugged by this idea that comes out, which is like people were dumb in the past. And all of a sudden somebody figured out like, hey, we don't have to play by these rules. Let's just snipe people from the trees. Like, no. There's hundreds of thousands of redcoats and they have drilled. I mean, even we just had Lexington and Concord anniversary. Yeah. Those redcoats marched like 40 miles, did not have enough equipment, fought against overwhelming odds of Minutemen and responders and made their way back. Like they were in the wrong, but also those are some hard men. Those are tough war fighters, and they didn't just blunder out into the woods and get shot by a bunch of crafty squirrel hunters. Like this was combat being done by people who had studied combat and fought in wars. It doesn't get simplified that way. So
it seems
one of my least favorite tropes is like, well, what we need is a young guy who thinks outside the box. He's going to defeat the professionals who have drilled and trained this stuff and done all the book work, because it is book work.
Yeah, it cheapens the American independence if you try and
Yes,
treat
yeah,
British dudes like just dumb stormtroopers.
yeah,
These guys were savages, man. Like I was coming
yeah.
across because I'm doing the Baker rifle, right? And a lot of the Baker rifle for the implementation with the rifle regiments with the English, they learned their lessons in like the American Revolution, where the Americans were using those rifles, and the British knew of the rifles, right? They had rifles there. They would have certain guys with rifles and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So it's not
Yeah,
unfamiliar tech, right? It's not like this brand new stuff. They I think like I read that they would have like accounts where it's like, yeah, they would shoot rifles at us, but then we would just go and shoot at them and close a gap with a bayonet. And it's like, these dudes are savages, man. Like they are
yeah.
go getters. And so if you're like, oh, they're these dumb redcoats beep bopping along, dude, they had to fight for that independence violently, and it was
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then the American Civil War is rough. And you still kind of have this idea because there's so many there's new ideas and there's new technology. You have repeaters and Gatling guns. There's people using hot air balloons to spot for artillery. Like a lot of World War One strategy that you think of today, like using balloons for spotting long range indirect fire and trenches and stuff. They were doing that in the 1860s, but at the same time, these new ideas did not really supersede the old ones. Like you have this idea, if you appreciate the Southern side, you lionize some of these guys who did absolutely incredible stuff. But like Jeb Stuart, sometimes there's this legend, like he was a gallant, cavalry officer, these utterly daring raids and charges and things like that. And he thought outside the box, and he just came up with crazy off the wall stuff that worked. And it was like, no. This man was a professional who knew that he could break certain rules only because he knew the rules. And one example of this is he was given access to some artillery at one point, and he misused it and was chastised for it and went away and became a proficient artillery officer, as he continues to engage in his cavalry activities, so that he will know how to use artillery properly in the future. There is none of this like, we'll bring in a guy. He's such a wild card. They'll never know what he's doing. Like that'll be our secret.
Yeah.
There's none of that. There's all these amazing West Point guys, doing some of the craziest, all of their outside of the box stuff is built on top of a huge amount of institutional knowledge and deep experience. And it's fascinating to read that stuff.
When you know the rules of the game, you can bend the rules accordingly.
Yes.
The Civil War.
If you don't know the rules of the game, something terrible will happen to you, and you won't be sure why. But it'll be over.
The Civil War is terrifying. Absolutely,
it's awful. Yeah.
It's from like the just shrinking it down, right? Micro foot soldier level, right? Where you have these rifled muskets. It's like probably over harped on with like the Napoleonic era with sharp stuff, how the Baker rifle was the extreme edge of these rifle regiments, and they were the bane of the British infantry or the French infantry, picking them off at distance, but they don't swing like major battles, you know what I mean, right? Like it's the line infantry that are your core. I imagine with those rifled muskets, you're deleting so much of the slow nature of those earlier flintlocks, and you have the Minier ball with your cartridges, the speed increases of the and then the distance increases too. And so you're still using like these Napoleonic formations here and there in the Civil War. And yet again, not an expert, using these formations that are very familiar to Napoleonic warfare. And it's like you're using now rifled, way more accurate weapons. It's insane.
Right.
About absolutely insane. Like that was like going down the black powder muzzle loading rabbit hole was like blowing my mind thinking about like these guys' experience.
Yeah.
So that was one of the cool parts about the whole thing is like getting a much more tactile feel, even though I'm not like a reenactor, but like the taste of that history.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think about, so brutal and so grueling. I mean, the Civil War casualty rates are just, unbelievable that, on the one hand, the weaponry was so much more devastating than some of the things people had before. And they were using a lot of the same tactics and formations. On the other hand, the weapons were in many ways less devastating than stuff, shortly thereafter in World War I, and people still were massing for these huge battles, and just the absolute slaughter that occurred. It's just incredibly tragic stuff. So that's a great note to end on. We can end on that note. Second try at an ending, or we could talk about something slightly more upbeat. A real quick upbeat closer.
Yeah, this is your fault.
Yeah. Another property with a lot of different endings to it is Lord of the Rings. You got any thoughts on Lord of the Rings, real quick as we close? Like 15 seconds worth of deep Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth stuff.
I think it's one of my favorite stories because there is no Game of Thrones-ifying it with the morality, the gray zone of morality. It is just pure good.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes.
And I thoroughly love it.
Yep. Yeah, I have gotten to be a much bigger. I was a huge Lord of the Rings fan as a kid because it was because it was Lord of the Rings. It was adventure, fighting, exotic locations. The older I've gotten, the more I've appreciated the deeper aspects of Lord of the Rings, and the books. I can't really think about the movies as movies. I just think of them as like, oh yeah, there's that place. Oh, that guy. I know how they did that. I remember him. We had this great conversation about that. I saw him over here. Like, I can't think of them as movies. I understand in my head that they're not the best version of what the books could be, even though they're the best movies that anybody has ever made about Lord of the Rings. There's stuff that bugs me about them as a movie, but I can't watch them like a movie. I just watch them almost like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know, a little too close to them because it was all happening right when we were in New Zealand. But as I got older, I appreciated the books tremendously. That aspect where every character has a moral struggle, but not even the worst characters don't get drugged through the mud of gray, amoral, nihilistic pointlessness that the Game of Thrones people do. It's like, no, even the terrible people have good and bad in them, but there's also justice and judgment and sometimes even an opportunity for redemption. And then the good guys have struggles and difficulties and either overcome them as part of the struggle or overcome them later as part of the victory, depending on what part of the story you're in. But it's just so much more true to life. It's even obviously the Narnia books are like the classic Christian analogy, the classic Christian metaphor, and it is a great like gospel picture in that first book there. But I think the Lord of the Rings books are a super deep reflection of actual Christian life, the ongoing Christian life, not just like a snapshot, a brief moment in time. So yeah, the older I get, the more I appreciate them, the less time that I have to read them though.
This is true. You got YouTube channels to make videos for.
Yeah. Which reminds me, we should go, we should sign off, let people listen to this podcast and go make some YouTube videos. So
we should.
Thank you so much for the conversation. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope other people have had fun listening to however long this actually turned out to be. But it's been fun to finally connect. We've missed each other at SHOT Show like a dozen times. Like maybe 4 times. But it's great to chat.
Great to chat. Thanks for having me on, sir.